Welcome to the next episode of the Assembly Line podcast, the place where industrial businesses come to tell their story and give you the tools you need to become an authority within your industry. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by Russell Watkins, a standout figure in the manufacturing scene, especially known for his lean consultancy and insights into the manufacturing process, technology, and people. Russell has a knack for making complex technology concepts accessible and relevant to traditional manufacturing businesses. And his journey has been earmarked by hands-on experiences with a keen eye for Industry 4.0. With his unique blend of practical knowledge and forward-thinking ideas, Russell is the person to guide us through the ever-evolving landscape of manufacturing and how people and technology sit within that bracket. Russell, we're delighted to have you on the Assembly Line podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So to get us started, I would like to take it right back to the beginning, to where things started with you. And I'd be interested to hear a bit more about your journey into the world of manufacturing, what brought you into the industry, and what has got you to the point where you are today.
Okay. So I've been kicking around manufacturing for about 30 years now. I stumbled into it originally, and I've spent most of my time in automotive, aerospace, and construction, working for manufacturing businesses. And then when I went freelance across a lot of other sectors. But I stumbled into it. Yeah, I was in materials planning, capacity planning. And if you capacity plan landing gear for aircraft, by the way, you soon realize how treacherous it is to fly. Then I blagged my way into the SMMT Industry Forum consultancy, lean consultancy, where they brought master engineers from Japan over and trained us to see properly. Then I became a lean coordinator in another manufacturing business, Delphi. Then I spent some time in operations, because you can't just do lean without having some operations experience, I think. You become the person who tells people from the sideline without actually having played the game. Then I did the slippery pole thing of lean coordinator, lean manager, regional lean manager, and then global lean, directing for JCB's lean program. And finally, 2007, I went freelance, started Senpai. It turns out that Senpai is my best employer so far, because I've been with them longest.
Got you. I just want to dig a bit deeper there into what is it specifically that you think brought you into this space in the first place? Like, is there anything about you as an individual, like your sort of the things that you like, the things that you enjoy to do? Do you like to see how things work, which is something that we hear quite often? Like, what was it that I think kind of triggered you to get involved?
Well, when I was younger, I wasn't sufficiently interested in my family history. If I had been, I'd have realised that manufacturing's in my blood. My grandfather built Spitfires during World War II in Vosper Thornycroft, down in Southampton, and various other family members going back generations have toiled in factories. And when I first got into a factory, I was saving with my then girlfriend, my now wife, to go around the world after being students. And her mother worked in purchasing in a factory. And they had a job installing some crappy computer system. And he needed help. And I tell you, I may have embellished this over the years, but walking into that factory, it was like coming home. It was beautiful. The sounds, the smells, it was fantastic. So I'm kind of hardwired to be in factories as an environment, because I find it comforting. I also find it fascinating because there's a million variables at work. It's so hard to get things to flow because so many things are working. But if I look back at my life, there are three seminal points that led me to where I am. Do you want me to talk about those? Okay, so the first thing is an odd one. So my mother, she's 5'0". She's tiny. She's a force of nature, and she's disabled. She has dislocated hips, both hips. Numerous operations, never been defined by her disability, always defined by what she can do. The great thing about having a disabled parent as a child is that you learn to see the world around you clearly. Where are the hazards? Where might she slip? Where's the next bench? Her life has been bookmarked by understanding the environment and the people around her and always having a contingency plan.
Yeah.
In fact, her flat, where she lives now, is set up as a beautiful, lean example of parts presentation. How do I get things in the right place? So having a mother and understanding the need to minimize motion takes you naturally into the 7 wastes and lean. So I was lucky in that sense. My mother not so lucky, me lucky. The second point was I met my Toyota sensei, and because I like to read, he did me a massive favor by deconstructing my book knowledge, stripping me naked and shivering, and then building me back up with practical knowledge. And the third point was I got an insect bite in Mumbai, and that's what made me go freelance.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, is there anything you would like to share that or?
Was that? No. So sorry, I left that hanging, didn't I? So
I thought I cut you off, Russ. Sorry. I think
no,
blimey,
no. So I was in Mumbai back in 2007, working for JCB. JCB, bless them. I love JCB because when you work there, you can't help but have yellow running through your veins. But they can be a tricky company to work for. They can be a bit tricksy. Anyway, they had a habit of, unless you were a director, you fly economy everywhere, which is fine, except I was flying between the UK to India and in India to the US to help put some fires out in factories. While I was in India, I got bitten by an insect that I didn't see, and my hand swelled up like a balloon. So they took me to a hospital, offered me an injection and some tablets, and I took the tablets. And then at 10 o'clock on a cold Mumbai night, I was crowded in the airport, trying to get through the smallest door in the world to my plane, about to fly 14 hours in economy, having made a makeshift sling out of my JCB tie to hold my swollen arm, thinking, hang on, if I'm going through this pain, why don't I do this for myself rather than doing it for somebody else and being cramped in economy? So that moment for me was the point at which I decided to go solo and set up Senpai to do things on my own terms.
So great, that's very interesting, Russell. I think there's obviously a lot of different stages you talked about there in terms of your journey, but I'd be interested to hear if there was a particular milestone that you would say has really shaped and influenced you as a professional within the space.
Yes, it has. Now, so I'm primarily lean manufacturing operations and helping people to improve the way their factories flow by making their people more capable. But something that happened that got me thinking and has influenced the way that I do things since about, I don't know, there were 2 incidents that really affected me. And they're to do with safety. So when I was in my early mid-20s, I was in a factory and I was stock counting. Of course, in my 20s, I tended to believe that I was invincible. I couldn't be hurt. And I had to stock count a metal bin that was about two bays up in some racking. So I climbed the racking. Yeah, I climbed the racking because back then you climbed the racking, it was madness. I grabbed hold of the bin I wanted to look inside. It turned out it was empty. I fell back on the ground and some force within me, never happened since, got me to roll back like a ninja in a way that I can't, and I still can't. And the bin came crashing down and gouged the floor. That was my first wake-up call on safety. And that got me safer. That got me thinking about, right, how do you encourage people to work in manufacturing in a way that is better for them and the business? And direct experience is the key. And making that direct experience something that they can viscerally learn through their body rather than just chirping at them or giving them PowerPoints. Because that made me a far safer person.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're hearing a lot at the moment about safety in factories and signage and barriers and making sure that everything's in the right place, and that there's a lot of interesting technology that's coming out, I think, to make those types of environments safer for everyone that's operating. And what we're talking about there is not the large corporates, the billion-pound companies. We're talking about the smaller factories that are now also starting to take that seriously. And I think it's probably taken longer than it should have in some environments for that to become the case. Moving on to, sorry, Russell, of course.
Sorry, absolutely right. That there's a couple of things on that. What I've seen over the years is people are better at painting gangways now to visually separate people and materials handling equipment. That much is better. They're getting better at physical separation. You see a lot more barriering now. I do see some nice forklifts with sensoring, and you see them projecting on the floor their turning zone and that. But there are some basic things that I saw in Japan 3 years ago where they were trying to use haptics to let people experience what an injury feels like without being injured.
Okay.
Now that's fascinating, because there is a fine line there between scaremongering people and letting them feel the feeling without feeling the results. So for example, one factory had serious crush injuries, so they developed a glove that was really well padded, and people would put their hand underneath this weight that would drop, and it would hit their hand, so they felt the force of it, but they didn't get any broken bones. I think using AI and digital tech, there's probably a way that we can use that haptic stuff, mixed reality, AR, to get people safer.
Yeah, that leads us in nicely there, Russell, to talking about almost bridging this gap in terms of technology. Andreas and I have been working with quite a number of manufacturing companies probably for the last 4 years now. And one thing that we always saw as people that had come from quite technological backgrounds was, wow, a lot of these businesses are quite far behind in terms of even how they manage their finance systems, and how they manage their HR, and the paper that's being pushed around the office and things like that. It was almost alien to us and the environments that we've been in the past. And now we're seeing a lot of VR and AR coming into sort of commercial use cases. But I'd be interested to hear from you, like, what are some of the key challenges and opportunities when integrating new technology within these types of environments? Right.
This is a fascinating area, and it's a huge area. This is one where I could easily go on a bit, so I'm gonna have to discipline myself here. A couple of quick points, and then I want to go back to basics about how and when you should engage with digital providers, vendors. So back to basics. Strong believer in you should digitize digital manufacturing industry for where you should, not where you can. Just because you can run a proof of concept, and maybe you are a digital savvy MD or engineering director who likes to try things, it's not a strong enough reason to want to run the experiment, either for ego reasons or because you're an early adopter. Got to link it to a business pain. So that linking to a pain or gain means you've got a purpose for it. If you can't do that, I wouldn't bother. You also got to go in with your eyes wide open. And one thing that I think gets forgotten is that sometimes people do have a business reason to do this stuff, and that's good. They do it, but they don't consider the next iteration. So if you buy a solution for a problem, a digital solution, you have to be thinking further ahead and future-proof it and say, okay, once that model year goes away, or once I want to use that device or programming somewhere else, sensor somewhere else, how easy is it for me to move it across? Do I have to incur more cost? Do I have to go through the same rigmarole? So it's almost like a SMED thing for the next time you use it. That's one to consider. But I want to go right back to basics. And I think the biggest gap I see is the way that vendors and manufacturers talk to each other. And about a year and a bit ago, I did a blog. Manufacturers are from Mars and vendors are from Venus, because they talk different languages. And I made 6 broad points. Do you want me to go through those?
Absolutely.
Don't worry, I won't labour it. The 6 broad points were that there were 3 for digital tech providers, the vendors, and 3 for manufacturers. And the first one for the tech providers was, look, stop taking the what do you want? Yep, we can do that approach to flogging your shiny baubles. You've got to not fall in love with your solution. You've got to learn to diagnose and fall in love with your manufacturer's problems. The second one was that when you fall in love with the problems, you have to be prepared to go out on the shop and understand the current state and have the diagnostic ability to stand there and see. And one of the biggest gaps I see in digital providers is they have some beautiful solutions, a solution looking for a problem, but they haven't got the diagnostic ability to A, know whether it should be used here, and B, how it should be deployed to best effect. And then a third one for the technology providers was a generalized understanding of manufacturing just gives a vanilla solution. So you've got to put a bit of effort into knowing whether they're selling custard, cars, or condoms, and knowing how those are manufactured and understanding the specific issues. From the manufacturer side, they're letting themselves down in terms of engaging with digital people by they're not being clear. They're not being clear and grasping, these are my safety, quality, delivery, cost, people issues, and the specific ones I want to address with you are these, to give the vendor a bit of a lead. They also don't expect enough of vendors. They're happy to let vendors come in, get in the boardroom, have a cup of tea and a chat, show their wares, and then go for a general stroll. The start point should be the walk around the shop, the Gemba walk, and where can we help you? And then the final point for manufacturers is there's no point getting a smart digital provider in and then sitting back and saying, right, show me what you can do. You have to open the kimono on your problems, tell them something real that you've got, and let them have a go at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of important points there. I think it might be useful, valuable to the audience if you can maybe recall a time in the past where you've had a really good example of this being done, essentially, like doing it in the right way.
Yeah.
And how that looked like.
Sure. So I reached out to an eye tracking company for a client. It was an automotive client, and I reached out to an eye tracking company because we wanted to experiment and see whether it could help us with a skill problem. Maintenance. Some maintenance people were more skilled than others in doing some breakdown work, and we wanted to be able to create a library of what the best maintenance people look at and the sequence they go through to fix very, very specific problems. Anyway, I contacted the vendor. He asked really good clarifying questions on the phone, like, why do you want to do it? Why can't you do it yourself? What's the specific problem? And then when he came in, the first thing he wanted to do was, please, can I have a look at your shop floor? Can you show me your products? And can you take me to a cell where you have this problem? Or take me to a machine where you have this problem? And he was prepared to walk there, to stand there. And he didn't want to showboat. And he wasn't trying to compete on showing us he understood. He just asked questions that were smart and helped him to understand whether and how his solution could help. And then when we went back into the boardroom and had a chat, they had a little demo set up that they could very quickly integrate a bit of our process. So they thought hard about that and just show the hair to the dog in a very specific way.
Wow. I mean, first off, not only does that sound like an interesting solution and sales process, but it sounds like a very good salesperson involved in that process. And I think being prepared for someone to say, almost being prepared to convince someone out of your solution if it is not the right fit to solve that problem is incredibly powerful for the situations in which it is appropriate. And also in the future, you create an incredible amount of credibility with those that maybe it's not appropriate for which it might be appropriate for someday. So I think there's a lot to learn, obviously, with the relationship between a manufacturing company and a vendor there, but also just generally in how we sell things to clients. I think that's a really interesting case study there.
Well, it's in and he was very good, and he was smart. So subsequently, he engaged me to help to upskill his salespeople in lean manufacturing so that they could see more, so they could diagnose, which was a nice couple of days in Sweden to help them do that. But there are the two key things that good digital suppliers do is that when they have the initial contact, they clarify whether it's worth it or not. Now, listen, I'm telling my granny to suck eggs here. I don't know why they don't do it still, but is there a purpose to us coming? And then when they're actually there, if what you think they're useful for isn't, and they can see that, before they go out on the shop floor, they'll have asked a couple of questions if they're smart. And the three key questions to ask before you go for a shop floor tour are: firstly, is today a normal day, so that you can calibrate whether it's standard? Secondly, can you tell me what your top 3 quality problems are on this site currently? Can you tell me what your top 3 safety problems are on this site currently? That tells you how well the people running the business grasp their issues, and it also gives you other potential understanding as you walk around of, if it doesn't work there, where else might it work?
Yeah. Wow. Really interesting. On a kind of separate note now, I'm interested to hear from you what you're excited about in regards to this technology and the future. Whilst we're still on this topic, is like what really excites you as someone that's been in the industry for this number of years. You're starting to see companies adopt different approaches, different ways of doing things, lean principles, etc. What are you excited about? It could be in regards to technology, it could be in regards to process. So what's really kind of getting you going at the moment?
It's really the possibilities of easing the burden and taking away traditionally wasteful things. So easing the burden is about people. Jobs that are either hostile, difficult, heavy, or very difficult to see where the next improvement will come from. I think some of these solutions have the ability to see where human eyes can't, and to ease the physical burden for certain jobs, which is particularly important, especially since, we've no longer got access to a cheap Eastern European labour pool, quite rightly. By quite rightly, I mean it made us lazy, because we didn't engage people. We didn't engage enough people back into manufacturing. We no longer have the ability to buy cheap goods from overseas. So we have to find ways to make work easier, and therefore take away the things that make it labour costs very high, make it tricky. So my excitement is around making life easier and solving business problems at the same time, I think. I really like that stuff. The really interesting stuff is around the ability to levelize skill. So finding ways. So if you have 3 setters in an injection mold business, they're unlikely to be as good at everything as the other setter. One's on morning shift, one afternoon, one on nights. They're all decent setters, but they will be better at certain things than others. If you can capture their knowledge in a way that isn't threatening, and you can bridge that knowledge across from one to the other, you create 3 super setters within your business who have shared their abilities. And the ease with which you can capture that now is really impressive if you have the will to do it, and you manage the fears that those people will have about you trying to de-skill them, which you're not.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point. And also, when you look at it through, I suppose, like a commercial lens, if you look at the sort of value of that business from that point, where you've got these, even just having a really clear set of like SOPs in place, and having processes, practices documented, standards governed, learning transferred, I think all of those create for a more commercially healthy organization, and one that will exist for longer than if it didn't have that, which then obviously ensures that there's those setters stay in their job and are secure there.
Yeah.
Another 3 are hired over the next 5 years, and then it's like you have this clear plan of growth, whereas without it, you're just relying on what's in people's heads.
Yeah, 100% agree, Joe. And you can create a talent pipeline. Not only can you attract a younger generation for whom manufacturing is no longer sexy or has never appeared to be sexy, you can attract and you can keep them because, digital progression, some of those more interesting jobs that will come up, and the ability to keep learning and progress. There was a paper. There was a paper came out recently. There's some. I sit on an advisory board for a body called Interact, who are trying to look at how do we create a digital future that's useful but human-centric. And a paper came out recently was how do we make manufacturing charming again? Now, I'm not sure it's ever been charming, but given the fact that we're struggling to recruit skills and keep them, and we're going to need those skills to work with these digital solutions. We still haven't worked out how to put the right childcare provision in place at government and local and business level so that we free up the huge female labour pool, the women who could work in manufacturing but don't. 26% of people in manufacturing are women. Why isn't that 51% like the rest of the population? Why haven't we got a better mix? It's mad. That's before I even mention getting young people in and getting them attracted into manufacturing because of the digital and the exotic possibilities of what they could do.
We've had previous guests we've spoken to in quite some depth about attracting more young people to manufacturing, and it seems to still be something that is challenging on various levels, everything from kind of a governmental level and like policy and representation at that standpoint, but also from a more local level. And this kind of comes into a lot of what Andreas and I do at Solvi, is modernizing these businesses from an external perspective so that they appear attractive, engaging, and sort of appealing to younger people, because there's a reason why younger generations want to work for that really sexy like SaaS business that's out there. And that is because quite often of how they present themselves from the outside. So looking at those types of solutions about how we can start making those more attractive is as well as the new business component that we work on is part of the conversation that we're having with many of these like manufacturing leaders.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense to me. There's also so the most obvious cohort is the children of people who work in manufacturing, because there's a next generation to step up there. But if you're the daughter of an ops manager or ops director who comes home and their phone dings all night and they're pulling their hair out, perhaps they've got an ulcer or high blood pressure, why would you? I know lots of jobs are stressful, but there's something about manufacturing where the escalation process is, I've gone off on a right tangent now, but it's important. The escalation and the management of problems and solving problems at the right level has meant that to anybody who knows anybody who works in manufacturing, or to the children of, it looks like it's relentless. And I think we have to manage that mental burden and also make it more appealing to those closest to manufacturers.
Yeah,
but
I think overall, sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
I think overall it's more like a branding issue of the overall industry, or like a perception issue, because solving problems can be very, very exciting, especially in this space.
Yeah.
So, and young people, I think that's what they're really attracted in terms of, these fancy new SaaS businesses, for example, that they could go in. It's just the problems that they can solve appear more attractive. So if there could be almost this switch from problem to excitement, rather than seeing it as an obstacle, but like an opportunity to create something meaningful.
Yeah. I think quite right. Frame it as a challenge rather than the problem. My son's a hardcore gamer. He games constantly. He's either gaming or playing chess, or he's on his tablet, or he's playing Clash of Clans. That lad is a top-notch problem solver. perfect to be an engineer, but he won't do it. I've tried. And I think that's probably because I'm 53. I'm passionate, but we need the generations slightly below me as well to maybe engage as well.
Yeah, interesting. I want to move on now to some of your experiences and some of the things that I've read in quite some detail that you've written around Toyota and your opinions and your thoughts on that particular case study. First off, for anyone that hasn't read some of your work there and your kind of opinions and thoughts, could you just potentially provide a bit of an introduction to that type of case study and what that looks like from a high level, and then maybe we can dig a bit deeper there.
Sure. So I don't work for Toyota, but I've consulted to Toyota Group for the last 13, 14 years. My training was through Toyota Japanese engineers, and I've been 3 or 4 times for clients. So I've seen firsthand, and I continue to have conversations with Toyota Japan people about how they're approaching it. So it's secondhand, but it's close secondhand. Toyota is fascinating for me because I like the way they embrace digital solutions, and their thinking way is to embrace, but embrace sensibly. So the Toyota style thinking in general is that they don't want to just increase automation. They don't want to increase gadgets. They don't want to increase complexity and sensors and increase wearables. They don't just want to increase them. What they want to do is they want to enhance human skill, but use technology to identify Kaizen. Now, Kaizen, continuous improvement, to identify the next place you should go to squeeze some more value out of your process. And they want to do that by connecting data to problem identification. And what I mean by that is if you think about data lakes and the fact that we're harvesting so much data now through sensors and over the cloud and what have you, that we're all creating these massive data lakes, but we're rubbish fishermen and fisherwomen. We just can't fish very well. We don't know what fish we're after. We don't know what bait to put on the hook. We don't know where to cast our line. We're not good enough at asking a question of what fish do I want to catch? What problem do I want to solve? Where Toyota have stolen the march on many is that they've got the data lake, but they don't start fishing until they have a specific problem they want to ask, that they want to solve. And so in linking data to problem identification, they'll have a machine, for example, a machine with guards, a complex machine, because all machines are complex now. There'll be a problem with that machine, and they know that human eyes can't see it. They're not fast enough, or the problem's behind the guarding. So they want to ask the question, what can a sensor tell me? What variables can it capture? And what Kaizen opportunity can it see that I can't? But as a human, I've asked the question. I'm not asking AI to go through brute force or deep learning cycles to ask the right question. I understand the business as a whole, and I'm asking the question. So, they can collect data, they can collect pictures that human eyes can't. And then once they've solved that problem on that particular machine, they'll take that away from that machine, or they'll stop listening to that until they have another problem they want to solve. What they won't do is bang lots of cameras and sensors permanently onto machines, because they know something that many people don't, and that's that over the years, machines have got more and more complicated, and processes have. Not necessarily because of the physical transformation process of cutting something or bending something or molding something. It's because of all the bells and whistles that have been added on. Sensors, poker yokes, error proofs, all this kind of stuff. And what you end up with is something very complex that even the engineers don't know how it entirely works. They can't troubleshoot well enough because they don't know the basic machine well enough. And if stuff breaks, it might not actually be the process breaking. It might be some of the bells and whistles you banged on it permanently. So they don't want to overcomplicate, but they do want to use the best tech where they can. And Toyota are using AI, motion capture, they're using wearable tech, they're using it all. Fundamentally, but to bring it back to their approach as I understand it, they see it as in a factory, you have 4 or 5 things coming together. You have people, material, method, machines, and environment. The ones that really are of interest are the machine and the people, in that think of it as a numerator and denominator on an equation. They want to improve the work of the machine, of the equipment on the numerator, and on a denominator, they want to improve the work of the person. And their approach is, right, how do I improve the way the equipment, the way that our kit works? Well, I can use AI and other digital things to either predict problems, to be able to flag up symptoms early, to visualize issues. And I can improve people's work by taking away non-value added stuff like a team leader every morning walking around counting the stock, or them having to type their numbers into Excel every night for an hour to make somebody above them happy and able to cover their arse, and to reduce standardization across work. So their aim is to improve the way the equipment works, because that'll improve the first half of the equation, and improve the way the human works, the person, and then you get a gap of benefit. That was a massive answer. Apologies.
No, I think that's very interesting. So it's almost like making sure you separate between humans and machinery, making sure that you meet the requirements that humans need and the requirements that machines need in order to improve in those areas. But yeah, does that kind of...
Yeah, go on.
And what I was getting from that is almost, I think the effectiveness from that process is almost, so you're capturing almost factual information from different areas within the organization. You're having that organized and stored, that is accessible at any given point to humans, for example. And then if there is a problem, you do have that organized space of data that you can go and access in order to try and identify a solution.
That's one way of doing it. The issue with that way of doing it is that you end up having a lot of stuff stored in the cloud, and something like 6% of our electricity usage over the next few years is going to be supporting data centers and the huge amount of crap that we're storing in the cloud, all of us individually and as businesses. So I'll turn what you said in its head. Rather than harvesting everything just in case I have a problem and I need to go and interrogate that data, they'll capture a base level of data, of course, where they need to be able to monitor, is the process working, where can I improve. But to go deeper, they'll go deeper when they see a need to, and they'll go deeper for a period to solve that problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It sounds to me like it's almost like a doctor. Like when a doctor on the process. So like when there's a specific symptom that comes to surface, they then go in and complete a number of tests. They add sensors. They conduct what they need to do in order to then prescribe the relevant action, rather than like going in with a headache and then them, I don't know, doing something to your lower body that's absolutely unrelated to that specific symptom.
Quite right. The doctor needs diagnostic ability, and one of the, in my opinion, one of the key things that separates strong manufacturers from weak manufacturers is having good diagnostic ability at the right places in the business. Not being rose tinted and not being lazy. So they will do exactly what you suggested, Joe, so that's your Kaizen level. You're trying to either fix the process or make small improvements in the way it performs. At a higher level, what you could call kaikaku, which is like step change innovation, there is a need to be more strategic in terms of digital, and say, okay, this is how our business currently runs. This is where we are competitive. This is where we need to become more competitive. Where do we need to look at our business processes and maybe do something completely differently? So, and both things need to work in tandem, because if you try and Kaizen your way to being the best in the world, it'll take forever. At some point, you have to do a step change and then Kaizen that. So there's an innovation piece there as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's interesting. If you take this whole approach, obviously we have this on a big group, but if we place that onto a small business, what are some of the lessons that they can take from that approach, and how can they apply it in a small business?
So this is really important, given that 90% plus of manufacturers in the UK are 10%. They're 10 people or less, so it's really important. Yeah. The advantage I think small businesses have is that capital pounds or dollars are scarce for them. It doesn't sound like much an advantage, but if you don't have much to spend, you tend to think more clearly. So they are set up to be a bit tighter, which is good. I think before small businesses get into serious digital solutions, they need to recap where they are in terms of their stability. And what I mean by that is a technical solution will not solve a stability problem in a business. And by that, I mean, any manufacturer has to have 4 things in place for basic stability. Has to have enough people to do the work today. They have to be trained enough to do the work today. They have to have the bits around them to build whatever you want to build. And they have to have a piece of kit and tools that work well enough to do that. Now, I reckon a high percentage of manufacturers aren't quite strong enough on that. And layering a digital solution on top will be like putting lipstick on a pig. So first off, don't try and get your stability to 100% because you'll never get there. But get it so that your phone isn't dinging through the night. On top of that, they need to have some kind of working environment where people are doing the basics really well. Their team leaders, supervisors, engineers are doing the cycles of activity that help. And after that, my suggestion to SMEs, and it always has been, is look at what your biggest safety, quality, and probably productivity issues are in your business. So it might be bottleneck machines, it might be customer warranty claims on a certain process. And then look at what experiments, proof of concepts you could run with what kit that won't take ages, won't cost a fortune. You can afford them to fail, but you'll learn whether it works or not. And push vendors to do a proof of concept that is low cost. The problem there is that vendors have cottoned onto this. So some manufacturers are taking the mick now, and they're just running proof of concept after proof of concept without ever intending to buy the solution. And so that water's got a bit muddied as well. But a good vendor will.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I think there's some real lessons there for some of these sort of SMEs, these smaller organizations. In terms of kind of looking ahead now, as we get towards the end of the conversation, like in terms of looking ahead, looking to the future, what are some of the trends? They could be positive, they could be negative. What are some of the future trends that you see within the industry, potentially in relation to the interaction between the people and the business and the process itself? Where are things heading, do you think?
It's really hard this, and it's hard for 2 reasons. First reason is I'm not psychic, and the second reason is there's a risk here of me just peddling all the usual stuff that everybody else talks about. So I'll name check them, but then move on to something perhaps a bit more interesting. So I see the same things everybody does, and that's sustainability, localizing supply chains, and where you can't localize, trying to get them more resilient because of supply chain disruption, wars, etc. I see 2 things that I think are really interesting. Lean people have been chirping about this for years, and that's we go onto shop floors and we try to take waste out of processes by making it easier, applying a 7-way thinking, and that's shutting a stable door. There's some anecdotal number that 70% of the cost of a product is built in a design. The feeling is that if the waste is built in at design, we rarely go to work at the design stage, and I think we should be working harder to design for sustainability, for the circular economy. So looking at the materials that we're using, and it doesn't have to be a big company, materials we're using, and also for how are we going to ensure that we're not packing waste streams here full of crap in the future? And can we recycle these products? Elon Musk, for all of his flaws, I've been reading his biography recently, and I'm torn because he seems like he's not a likable man for me, but he has a love for manufacturing and he's a natural lean thinker in some ways. He is adamant that his design engineers sit on the assembly line, and they sit on the assembly line so that operators can come up to them and say, this doesn't fit, this doesn't work. Now imagine if you got design engineers anywhere and designers sat in the factory and being able to get immediate feedback on how sustainable and how good the products are. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, what I love about all the research I see out there and what manufacturers are saying is that, yes, there's a lot of talk around digital and machines and automation and stuff, but they're still not seeing enough critical skills and softer skills in people. That's existing people and also generations flowing through. So I'm heartened by the fact that one of the trends we have to take care of is that making sure that future generations have the softer skills to thrive in manufacturing businesses.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think these soft skills, as you say, will be incredibly important in the future. So overall, in this conversation, you shared a lot of key learning points, a lot of key takeaways. If you had one piece of advice to give to a manufacturing business that's just starting on their technological journey, they have the awareness, they know they need to improve on things, what would be that one piece of advice that you would give them?
Listen to your customers. So first, do no harm and listen to where your customers are telling you you're hurting them. Follow your data and go and have a look on the shop floor.
Great. Yeah, I think 3 really important components there. And one thing that I just want to note to finish is when we speak to sort of businesses that are working directly within these as in running these manufacturing businesses, often there is a big part of their character, I suppose, or a big part of what they do is they've got into it because they enjoy sort of engineering and working with things and creating things and producing things. But what sometimes happens is, I think that sort of business element and that commercial element is left behind to focus on the production of what they do. And I think from this conversation, one thing that I've really taken away from it is how you have tied in the business problems and the problems that customers are experiencing with the likes of technology and how the actual people within the business interact with that technology. And I'd say that's been a really interesting takeaway for me.
Joe, I think you've diagnosed it correctly. I think there are lots of engineers and manufacturers who love getting their hands in amongst it, but they are underdeveloped or they lose sight of the purpose of doing some of this stuff. But it's easy to. I was talking to somebody. I was taking some product and sales managers who I'm trying to help them understand lean and how they can apply it in their part of the business. I was taking them around the shop floor, and I was showing them how to look and how to understand how the shop floor runs. And I was very clear to tell them, look, this is hard. There are 1,000 variables here. This is tough to do. So anybody who's an ops manager, an ops director, or any senior role in manufacturing, it's thankless and it's always raining. So, we we have to be people like me have to appreciate that sometimes it's not a lack of capability, it's just that they've got too much to look at.
Exactly. And if you don't have that capacity, if your phone is dinging after work hours and you just don't have that headspace, that capacity to think about it, I think that's a really important thing to note there. Russell, look, it's been really interesting, today's conversation. I very much valued your time. I think we both have. As we finish up, I'd love for you to just be able to tell the audience where they can find you, find out a bit more about the business, and anything else that you'd like to share before we close up.
Okay, great, thank you. Listen, I've really enjoyed as well. Good questions, and apologies if at points I go off a bit deep in some areas. I'm very passionate about this, and thank you for bringing me back. It's good to have people who. It's really good for me. The reason I wanted to appear with you today is because you're 2 generations below me. You have understanding, and you're going to help us change manufacturing, as opposed to people of my age just moaning about it. So it's fantastic. So Senpai, you can find us www.senpai.co.uk. We work all over the world. You can find me on LinkedIn, Russell Watkins. Senpai is also on LinkedIn. I have a YouTube channel called @the_lean_expert, where we've got 70 or so videos helping people understand the basics of lean and practically how to do it. And on the website, you'll find quite a lot of free resources and blogs, actually, just me thinking out loud, but getting more disciplined the last few years about doing it.
Yeah, I have to say, I really enjoyed reading through some of those blogs, and I think there's a trove of information there that people that are within manufacturing businesses, but also for people that are looking from the outside and just interested in the industry, I think there's a load of things that people could look at there. Look, Russell, I again really appreciate your time today. Thanks for talking to us, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
Pleasure. It was fun. Thank you.